Hello YouTube, Ronan Kazi, the Division 2 Manhunt. So recently I talked about, building a good team building. One of the essential things, I'm doing a heroic overgrowth, this is part of the Manhunt. One of the essential things in team building is clearly defined roles. What is your role in the team? In the Division 2, everyone can do whatever they want. And so, having played a lot of legendaries, the best groups are groups that fit into defined roles. When you're doing a pickup group, how do you assign roles? Well, you really can't. People are just playing whatever they want to play. So you're hoping that there's some shared or common knowledge about the goal you're trying to do, which is to complete the mission, and everyone can assess what needs to be done. In the division, you can roughly say that you have a DPS, you might have some healing, and that DPS can be done by skill builds or by weapon. You can have support, and whether it's crowd control or healing, or both. And you can have some type of tanky type of characters. You can have just traditional tanks where they have a full shield, maybe only a handgun, but they're soaking up all the damage and getting the aggro. Or you might have, I'm going to call them modified tanks that are like DPS tanks. People that have, like Heartbreaker, or that use a shield maybe in a striker build. And in Destiny 2, they have 3 classes. The amount of people in normal content is 3 in a group. And so you have 3 classes: Hunter, Titan, and Warlock. In either game, it's important that you have roles defined to be optimally successful. And what do we mean by that? Success is completing the mission. That's the number 1. Number 2 is completing the mission in a timely fashion. Obviously, if you're just looking for fun, you wouldn't group with other people, because your fun is dependent upon someone else doing something, and or number 2, their fun is dependent upon you carrying out your perceived participation in the group, your perceived role in the group. So how do we do this in a pickup group? How do we define roles? Well, number 1, what I said earlier in the other video, is that you have to be responsible for your own self. You have to subjugate yourself to the role of to the goal of the team. Right, so let's just going to take that as a prerequisite. You're joining a mission, a heroic, a challenging, whatever, and the goal of the mission, the goal of the group is to complete the mission. This is a more formal contract when someone asks for help, like in a Shepherd, and you get a call, incoming call, backup call. That's implicit in the backup call. It's not that, hey, you're going to come in, now we're going to do something else. It's that the group leader is trying to accomplish something, and then you are trying to help them do that. So in a game that has no clearly defined healing classes and it's incumbent upon you to figure out what you need to do in the group to make it successful. Does the group have enough DPS? And this could go to your work. If you're on a project at work, you might have someone that's good at presenting, someone that's going to get up in front of the audience and talk to them. You might have other people that care more about getting facts and research. You might have other people that care more about how the presentation looks, that everything looks right, that the titles are all matching. And you might have some person that just is caring about the end goal, making sure that we're meeting what was set out. In a sales call, you might not have 4 people, but you might have a demonstration. And so the customer usually says, hey, I'm talking about in the field I was at, in the measuring machines that would measure if the machine was cut or made to specifications. They'd give you the print, they'd give you sample parts, and then you would create a program that would measure it, always in the fastest amount of time. There's never a case, let me not speak in absolutes, very seldom do we have infinite amount of time to accomplish goals. And so what people try to do in trying to alleviate the time component, because it's a stressor for a lot of people. But someone in the team is going to always be aware of that, hopefully. So let's get down into the team itself. So what roles you have. You have someone that's going to be, the point person, the person's going to kind of that you're all going to follow. You have someone that's going to provide DPS. You're going to have someone that's looking on your flanks and behind. And you might have some type of support effort. In Division 2, that's easy. The most successful groups have a blend of maybe skill DPS, weapon DPS, someone either doing crowd control or healing. And I'm talking about in Legendary. Again, in Heroic, it doesn't matter. You can all go DPS. The penalty in Heroic is you're going to redo it. So that I'm switching builds. That was my skill DPS build. Now this is my red build, which is rolled with RK and Alps pieces. So I have tons of repair. So I have high repair on this build, high survivability. I have elite damage reduction mods, but everything else is rolled red. The main core attribute is rolled red. So I have DPS. So this is kind of like a hybrid build. So I'm doing all of those roles in one character here, right? I'm the DPS, I'm the tank, and I'm the healer. So what's going to suffer? Obviously, I'm not maximizing my DPS for survivability. I have 2 skills dedicated to healing. So that's not as efficient. And you'll see when I think I'm really in trouble, I will throw down my healing hive. But getting back to the roles in the group, so that you have roles, those are generally the roles. And in an MMORPG, traditionally, you have tank, healer, DPS. And you have certain amounts in a game like World of Warcraft, you'll have 1 tank, 3 DPS, 1 healer. In other games, you'll have a similar amount of mix. If you get into some type of raiding or big group events, you might have 2 tanks, 2 healers, and you'll have someone that concentrates on the tank, maybe the off tank, and then the healer will concentrate on the main tank, and 1 healer will get everyone else up. And so when you're in that role, you're going to have a build that fits that, right? So you maybe have more AoE healing. In a game like The Division, it's a difference between something like the 2 healing skills I have. One's in AoE, right? That's the hive. And the other one is a personal 1-person single target heal, which is the drone. And so what is your role? How do you figure out your role? How do you figure out your role in life? Well, they have personality tests that you can take. And it doesn't matter which one you take. The specifics of a lot of this doesn't matter. What matters is that you keep doing the same thing. So, for example, there's a Briggs and Myers personality test that's kind of, people have used it in different businesses I've been in. There's a test called Principles that you can do. It's basically the same thing. They try to segment, within 16 or however many subcategories, roughly who you are and then what kind of builds you, what kind of people you best work with. Why is that important for you? Well, you've got to know, if you're honest with yourself and you answer these questions objectively, it's going to kind of tell you what kind of person you are, how you look at the world, and then who you mesh with. And once you know yourself, because that's really all we can control. We can only control ourselves. So once you know who you are, you can figure out what your role is. And in every group, you can say, do we have enough DPS? So even though we don't have a healer, we might need a DPS. So you may switch to your DPS build. You might be in a group that has tons of DPS. You might need to have crowd control. Makes it go faster. Because again, the penalty in heroic or legendary is you have to start all over. In legendary, it's also a time component. So it's a long time, 25 minutes at a minimum in most legendaries. So it's a big time component that you're putting in there. So in a pickup group, you're not going to have these roles, but you do have these roles. These roles are implicit. I have people that are doing damage. And in the division, it's really easy. You could have 4 damage dealers, but then, who's going to pick people up? The idea is you should be playing so that no one has to pick you up. If you're in Destiny, it's the same thing. The division's great because you have a normal, hard, blah, blah, challenging, heroic, legendary. And what I like about Destiny 2 is it has the same thing, but it feels more granular. They have a real number. It's based on your number, so you can tell where you sit in the difficulty spectrum, where you fit in there. But what role? So that's one of the things. If you're building a team, if you don't define the roles, then you're going to have a hard time with the team. Or if you have other people that don't recognize the roles. So when you're in a pickup group, the roles aren't stated. And since this is a game and you're in a pickup group, everyone doesn't want to play their roles. So it's incumbent upon you, if you want to be successful, to change and fit in so the team can achieve the goal. A lot of times in a lot of legendaries, that just comes down to DPS. If you don't have enough DPS, it's the core thing in the team. If you're at work and you don't have someone that can articulate your points in a group presentation, you're just done. Because if you could have the best message in the world, but the messenger has a lot to do with it. And same thing in sales. And I'm not saying you have to be super polished, but you just have to articulate, you have to understand it and articulate what the customer wants. In a group, you have to be able to help accomplish the goal. So that's a little bit on roles and building a team and team building. We talked about you got to know your place and you got to be willing to subject yourself to the benefit of the team, what the team's goal is. And so when that goes out, that's number one. Number two is then what role is everyone playing inside there? That helps the team to be more successful. I got a cat that's just going crazy right now, Pink. So this is when I normally tell you to like, subscribe, share, hit the dingy bell and everything. I appreciate YouTube talking about team building and roles. Have a good day.